Good afternoon, and welcome back to another session on Caribbean and Latin American news now. Now, that's a very important thing. We are 500 subscribers and growing and adding. So that's great. And thank you so much for your support. And we hope that we will be able to improve on and increase our subscriber base so that we can become a major network on Caribbean and Latin American news, political and social commentary. Now, this morning, or this afternoon, I should say, our topic has been affirmed because I am going to deal with a rather sensitive topic that we should be looking at and we should be delving into in the Caribbean. My topic is how empires use drugs and war to control nations from China to Venezuela. That is something that is a very interesting topic. In the 19th century, Britain waged the Opium Wars to force China into submission, flooding the country with drugs to control its people and its wealth. Fast forward to today, the United States, the current empire, is using narco-terror, sanctions, and covert war to destabilize Venezuela. History isn't repeating itself, it's being rewritten in a new, deadlier form. It's being rewritten in a new, deadlier form. That is what we have to understand from the British Opium Wars in the 19th century, China to China. That is the 19th century, China to the United States, narco-terror campaign against Venezuela today. Empires have used drugs, sanctions, and war as weapons to dominate nations that resist. In this video, we break down the shocking parallels between past and present imperialism and why the Caribbean and Latin America must learn from history to avoid repeating it. And do we never learn from history? That is our problem, because we are not able to make connections. And that is one of the weaknesses of our educational centers or academic institutions all across the region. Don't forget to subscribe and share to as many people so that they can understand the truth behind the empire's playbook. And once you begin to read the playbook, it's not hard to see what is happening in the world. Now, interestingly, we are talking about the whole matter of Venezuela. And Trinidad is also enmeshed in Guyana in that sort of impasse, that sort of saga between the United States and Venezuela. Now, this writer from the Trinidad Guardian, not the Trinidad Guardian, but the Trinidad Daily Express, yes, Trinidad Express, has a political commentary which he has written, which is beautifully written, and something that I think I should share with you. The title is Narco-Imperialism. And this was published on October 1st, 2025, so very recent. The Republic of China celebrated the 76th anniversary of Chinese Republic. Three principles of Chinese republicanism are uncompromising: anti-imperialism, self-reliance, and mass mobilization. Imperialism first came to China in the form of British and American narco-imperialism. Narco-imperialism refers to the use, weaponization, and politicization of narcotics to achieve military, economic, and political conquest. Here is a synopsis of China's historical war against imperialism and its quest for self-reliance and mass mobilization. Towards the end of the 18th century, the British and Americans sent emissaries to the emperor of the Manchu, that's the people of Manchuria dynasty, or the dynasty, sorry. They sought trade. They sought a market for their manufactories in populous China. But China was a world unto itself. The emperor saw no need to import Western goods. But what silly toys are these, he uttered on examining samples of Western goods, an air pump, a gun. That's what the Chinese emperor was saying. Because at the time, you must understand that the West had not yet conquered China, had never done so, but they conquered them to some extent through the Opium Wars, through drug trafficking. This sent the British and Americans ruminating. How do we break into the Chinese market? We buy so many precious goods from China, and we are made to pay in hard cash. Where can we find Chinese cash to pay for these goods? The answer, opium. So even though these two were, they were rivals, North Americans and the British, yet still they worked together. They worked in unison to defeat China. British ships introduced opium to the Chinese sailors at the seaports of China. The Chinese became addicted. By 1838, the British were exporting 40,000 chests of opium a year into China. Their source, Afghanistan. Their route, British-owned India. The British and Americans amassed huge cash fortunes, which they used to purchase Chinese goods. In the late 1830s, the emperor decided to act against the opium trade. Over 20,000 opium chests were seized and burned. The British declared their interests were threatened. They declared war against China. The emperor suffered a humiliating defeat. Remember, he had refused to buy European guns and cannons. I hope you're noting that. In the 1842 treaty ending this first Opium War, the British were remunerated 21 million silver dollars for the confiscated opium and for British war expenses. They never lose. They never lose. The emperor was forced to surrender Hong Kong to them and to open 5 treaty ports for British and US tax concessionary trade. British subjects were exempt from obeying Chinese law. In 1844, the US enforced its own treaty allowing itself to freely navigate major Chinese rivers to trade and establish bases in the Chinese hinterland. The Germans, Italians, French, and Russians secured similar rights. Have to be careful. That is how they work together to overthrow the global South. In the Second Opium War, 1858 to 1860, British and French troops looted and destroyed the emperor's summer palace in Peking. Lieutenant, however you pronounce it, Thomas Lister, described this event as follows, and I quote, "I never saw a demolition so complete. It does credit to the British soldier. Following these wars, the Europeans and Americans established their concessions, their own political, economic, and military enclaves in China, from which they supervised the emperor and accessed resources in the hinterland. Following the Opium Wars, the Manchus suffered a number of catastrophic defeats. In 1912, Sun Yat-sen, the revolutionary philosopher and physician, put the final nail on the coffin of the Manchus, and upon its remains, feudalism, landlordism, Confucianism, ruled by warlords, etc. He established the Republic of China. He became the leader of the Kuomintang, the Chinese Nationalist Party. However, his dream of republicanism was never fulfilled. He was succeeded by Chiang Kai-shek, a bosom buddy of the imperialists in China. But by then, opium had already taken root in China. It was customary, for example, to add a pinch of opium to sugar cane to soothe fretting babies. Even high-ranking generals and government officials used opium fashionably. The death blow to imperialism in China came with the Red March of the Chinese peasants and workers, led by Mao Zedong and heroic leaders such as Marshal Zhu. Mao and his guerrillas were dead set against imperialism and the opium trade, while Chiang Kai-shek made humiliating compromises to the Japanese invasion and occupation of Manchuria, that is from 1932 to 1945, the Red Army uncompromisingly attacked the occupiers. The Europeans and Americans provided Chiang Kai-shek with political cover, airplanes, tanks, artillery, gunboats, riverboats, and newspaper and radio propaganda in its drive to exterminate the Red Army. The Germans sent General Alexander von Falkenhayn to advise Chiang and to protect German business interests. So this is all about protecting in economic interests. That's what we have to understand. It's not about defending the territorial sovereignty of any country. Very important that we understand that. When Chiang's army chased the Red Army towards the northwest of China, a biblical retreat known as the Long March, facing dire hunger, some boiled their sandals for soup. Of the 300,000 soldiers who embarked on the 6,000-mile march, 1934 to 1936, only 8,000 survived. Okay? Only 8,000 survived. Anti-imperialism, self-reliance, and mass mobilization are forged in the historical trenches of Chinese history. From the real dialectics of Chinese struggle, today in China, the possession of 1 kilogram of opium could fetch you a swift execution. And today, the U.S. narco-imperialists, have weaponized and politicized cocaine and fentanyl to harass, weaken, or destroy the Bolivarian Republic. They are vying to control and enforce concessions for Venezuela's valued assets, oil, gas, gold, etc. And thriving along with these narco-imperialists is our Prime Minister, that is Kamala Person, the Cesar. Okay, so this is what is happening in our world today, that we have to go back to history and we have to look back at the Opium War that the British and the Americans waged on China in the 19th century to have captured China and to get what it wanted, or what it wanted, all right? Or what they want, because we have the British and the Americans vying for supremacy in China. All right? Do you see how they work? So we cannot afford to get ourselves on board and to sign up for what is happening with regard to what Venezuela. We have to look at what are the political and economic and military interests in everything that they're doing and in everything that they say. We have to parse those on. We have to parse through their rhetoric, through their narratives. Very important that we do that so that we'll be able to come out the victor, because knowledge is power. And that is what we have to understand. We cannot continue to think that ignorance is bliss. And many of our Caribbean citizens are living that old adage that ignorance is bliss. We cannot, at this juncture of our history, incentivize ignorance, because if we do so, it's going to be at our own detriment. And our Caribbean islands, as we know them as beautiful paradise, will be demolished. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you'd like, share, and subscribe. Like the video so the videos can be shared with as many people on the platform. And those of you who'd like to make monetary contributions to the channel, you can send it to my Cash App, the $MZ Talk9, $MZ or Z Talk9. See you in another video. Ciao. Adios.